Welcome to Soltron. This is the video review for the Plamatea, Amdriver, Jenus, and Wyvern. Alright, so in his armored mode, he is a little bit taller than a Voyager Transformer. And here's a look at his box, and he's got really gorgeous artwork on it. And then you can see the side, the different features. And then the back side, also done with really beautiful artwork. So all in all, pretty nice box, and it definitely shows you what you're going to be getting. And then as far as the instruction booklet, it's very plain. It just tells you all the steps to go through his various modes. And then the build instructions are where you get the nicer artwork. And then there's this one just folds out into a long brochure for some reason. But it doesn't really have anything special, just all the different steps. It is in color, and then you can see here's a close-up of the artwork. So it's got really great computer graphics, yeah, just really good artwork. And then here's a 360 of him with it in his Wyvern mode, with the vehicle armored onto his body. So it looks pretty good. He does come with a display stand. He doesn't really need it. He could probably stand without it, but it definitely does help. You can see he just looks good from all angles, and I'm always a fan of translucent plastic, so I really love all these translucent details everywhere. And then everything he just looks very cool, kind of like a Tron robot, really. We'll take a close look at his head sculpt here, and this is one of the places where I'm not actually that impressed. His face is really not that interesting to look at. It's just got kind of this black wash, and then it's got a couple little details in there, but you're not really gonna see much of anything. And it's got this translucent cap on top, these two really pointy antennae. He's definitely a model kit because these pieces feel extremely fragile. They're about as skinny as you can get on a model kit. But even for a model kit, I think he feels pretty good. He's very playable. The joints are not too loose anywhere. Everything feels pretty good. He's got a ball joint neck, and it does have a rocking motion. He's definitely not going to get anywhere upward motion. He's just not really built that way. He does have these shoulder joints, which will be easier to show off later probably. Yeah, actually I'll go over the articulation when we do his base body, but he's got enough articulation that he can pull off very good looking flying poses, and then maybe slashing poses. All right, well, he's off his base, so let's see if he can hold his own weight. Yeah, so he's fine standing on his own. He comes with this little adapter piece which pegs into his back for this mode. And that's how you get the stand on. It just pegs right here. So it's just barely in place. And then you can get his joints in place. You do have to grip it in certain places. You do have to be mindful of his articulation. But you're going to get really good flying poses, attacking poses. He can definitely do that for you. I guess he could have his legs move forward. Looks like he's attacking. Yeah, I guess his best pose is really just having his arms and legs all splayed out. I think that looks pretty good, and he definitely takes up all of the space. And then you can have this rear fin can also just fold down. And these shoulder pads do hinge up and down a little bit just to get out of the way of his shoulders. But that's all the articulation as far as the suit itself has. And then getting him out of his suit mode is pretty easy. So we'll just take off his stand again. So for his legs, he has this little panel back here. You're going to want to open that and then open up his knee pads as much as possible. And then you just pull out his foot right here, and you can see inside his boot maybe you can't. He's got a little peg in there that corresponds to this heel. So when you're dressing him, you just slide his heel in there. And then it can be a little bit tricky to get it on the peg. So you have to work with a little bit, but that's the boots remove. Pretty simple. And this toe wasn't pointed for some reason. Don't know what that's about. And then for his arms, you're just going to open up these. And then it's just held on by this one little peg. So that comes off very easily. And then his shoulders and armor, you don't actually have to separate. The instructions do tell you to take the armor pieces off, but I find that it's more hassle than it's worth. So you can actually just unpeg these shoulder harnesses. So you just pull those straight off like that. And then this is going to go obviously under his crotch. And then he is pegged, his back is pegged into this section right here. So you're going to want to unpeg that delicately. This is a model kit, you don't want anything to fall off. And then you can just maneuver him out of there, and then that's that whole section. So that's all his armor removed. So there's his base frame. And then his armor can recombine into kind of a giant hoverboard. So to do that, we're just going to take all these hinges. So we're going to take this chest section, and then this is an annoying hinge that comes off all the time. It's this piece, but that's just supposed to hinge up. And then there's like a multitude of hinges, and then we have to hinge this backpack connection section. And then we're going to open up these blue panels, and then these boosters can stay open. They don't really have to close. And then we just need to articulate this thing, and it's not going to be pretty. This undercarriage section just looks kind of bad, honestly, but then this is going to peg back in where it was for his armor mode, and then this section will just peg to the top. I just want to make sure that hinge didn't come out, and of course it did, because that's what it likes to do. Alright, so now I'm having a problem with all the hinges. But basically it'll straighten out like this. Alright, so everything should straighten out like this. And this hinge right here, this chest hinge, is the worst part of the kit. It is very annoying that this hinge isn't enclosed, because these pieces do tend to pop off. Like this panel will pop off, or sometimes this panel. So that is the most annoying part of the kit, and it's pretty important connection piece, so that's just like something you have to live with. And this piece I don't think is supposed to do anything. I think it is just supposed to lay here. But you see there's like a lot of under kibble, but that's just kind of how it's supposed to be. And then for the let's see, so the blade weapons are now going to slide into these channels right here on the side of the shoulder armors. And then you're just going to tab this blue section, will just tab into there and just hold everything in place for you. And then you do the same on the other side. You just push down that handle, slide this in, and then tab that one in place. And there you have like more of the board. And then finally, the leg sections, you're just going to collapse everything. And then you do need to move this booster a little bit. And this is just, you can see there's like a keyed slotted spot, so that's just there, and then you just slide it forward, and that will key everything into place. And there's the board. And honestly, in hand, this is a model kit. It does feel a little bit fragile. It doesn't feel like a toy. It definitely does feel like a model, so you're always going to have to keep that in mind. And he does have like these little thin pieces, so it does have like these little fragile pieces you have to be very thoughtful about, and make sure that you're holding in the right way. But here's the board, and the board actually looks pretty cool. And then you have to, unfortunately, you can't use the same adapter. You do have to switch this out for this other adapter piece. And then that's going to basically just clip onto this undercarriage section here. It's going to slot into these little slots, and actually Yeah, it actually slots way back here. And this piece kind of like grips this hinge back here, so you got to just make sure that's in place. But there's basically the board mode. Okay, so it turns out I did lie. You can actually clean up this undercarriage mode. So it makes kind of this W looking shape. So that's what it's supposed to be, so that this stand will grip it correctly. So you do have to have it in the right configuration. Is getting all those armatures compressed as much as possible. And then there's the board mode, which looks something like out of Gradius. So it looks like a shoot 'em up kind of jet. And you can see how he stands next to it. Everything like scales pretty well together, and we can see he is about the size of a small Voyager transformer. So he is a little bit on the small side, maybe a large deluxe, but he is very skinny. And then he does have these pegs on his feet, and he's got 4 pegs that are on the deck of the hoverboard. So using his articulation, which I guess we can talk about now. So he does have that neck articulation. He does have this pivot on the shoulder, and then he does have a ball joint, which is inside the chest. So you do get a lot of good butterfly joint right there. And then he does have this swivel on the bicep, which is a little bit too easy to dissect. And he does have double jointed elbow here. And then he does have a nice elbow pad, which keeps that nice and clean. And he does have ball joint wrists. And then he does have a chest ball joint here, so you can get a little bit of crunch. It's really not going to be very much, and a little bit of flex. And then he does have these universal hips, so you can get a great amount of outward motion. His butt flap is not going to really let him go backwards. And then he does have a joint here in the crotch, but he's also got thigh swivel up here, so he's got a thigh cut. And then he does have a double joint knee, so you can get a good bend like this. And then he does have ball joint ankles. And then he's got this bending toe, which is not really good for anything. So you're going to get a pretty good amount of posability out of him. It's not terrific, but it's I don't know. I guess it's on par with maybe a modern model kit. But he does feel a little bit lacking compared to like a real grade Gundam, like the G-Quux that I did not too long ago. That figure definitely felt a little bit more buttery than this figure as far as articulation. So I'm just gonna try to peg him onto these ball pegs. This one actually is spaced apart so that you can put both the pegs of his feet on the deck, and then you're basically just articulate him some kind of way on here. And then this stand, this is where the stand really fails. Like, it cannot handle this. The stand does not like this configuration at all. It is possible to get it on there, but it's barely holding on. All right, so there he is on his hoverboard. I would definitely recommend getting a better stand for this and not relying on this stand long term, because it definitely will start deforming, because this is just too much weight for this scrawny little arm. So that's unfortunate. It would have been nice maybe if it came with one more stand just to help stabilize things, or if it came with like a stronger arm, a thicker plastic arm. All right, and he does have like another thing you could do. You could actually take off this arm off the stand. You can put it on the small of his back here, and then you can use this tube adapter, and then this can peg onto one of his footholds if you wanted him to be, for some reason, hovering off of his board. I don't really know what the point of this is. I guess if you wanted him riding more forward, you could do that. Yeah, this is, again, it's very pointless. But it is in the instruction booklet. You can do that. And then he does have one other thing, which is very nice that he comes with, which is this set of armor. So he's got 2 forearm armors, 2 shin guards, chest armor, shoulder armor, and then he does come with this blade, which is meant to be held in one of his weapon hands. So those are just like your standard weapon hands. You have to split them in half in order to get the weapon in it, which is a little bit old-fashioned. And then he's got 2 open hands as well, so you can get those poses. And of course, all you do is you just pull off his regular hands, and then you just switch those out. So he comes with this really pretty blade weapon, which looks very futuristic and cool. And then for putting the armor on, it's all very simple. We're just going to peg the shoulder armor. He's got 2 holes in his nipples, and that's where these 2 posts go. And then the shoulder armor, I don't think it matters which side you put it on. It's pretty universal. So you just put that on to the holes in his shoulders. And then for his forearm armor, these do matter because it has to go into the hole in his forearms. And then you just put those back together and give them a little squeeze. And then finally his shin armor does split in half. It actually splits into 3 pieces because this piece will also fall out, which is a little bit annoying. And then I don't think it really matters which side you peg it into. They're pretty similar on both sides, but these are a little bit more of a hassle. So you have to peg that in there and then get the other half and then peg that in there. It would have been nice if they just split into 2 pieces instead of 3, but it's not that big a deal. Now he's struggling to stand up. All right. So there he is all armored up, and that definitely does elevate his look a lot and give him some good color separation. So he looks great. Of course, he can get back on his hoverboard. I'm not going to bother with this stand because this stand is just going to have a bad time with this right now. All right, so there he is on his hoverboard. Looking pretty cool, looking ready to slash something with his new arm blade while he flies by. So looking very cool. And then the pegs are solid enough. I guess that's why you get the stand as well, in case you wanted him to be like floating off to the side or like upside down, so you don't have to worry about him falling off. All right, so I think I've covered pretty much everything. So here's a great view of this guy in an action pose, and yeah, he looks really gorgeous actually. I do love that about this model kit. So as far as the build quality, I felt this was a little bit less than the Bandai kits, the Bandai high grades that I've been doing lately. I wouldn't say that it's bad per se, it's just like a little step below that. This does feel pretty good for the most part. It definitely does feel like a model kit. It's definitely not going to feel like a toy once you have it all assembled. Everything does feel a little bit fragile. It does take a little bit of work, but I think the results are definitely worth it. And this cost about $65 on Big Bad Toy Store. And that's basically on eBay. If you're getting like this original figure, he's probably like $100, $120 just to have Jenus with this armor. I'm pretty sure is $120, and then you have to buy the board separately, which would be another $40 on top of that, maybe $30 if you're lucky you can get one of these. So considering how expensive the eBay prices are now just to get the armor suits, this is actually a pretty good deal at $65. I had a good time building it. It went by pretty quickly. It wasn't too much work. I would say half the build is the board and the other half is Jenus himself. I think they could have gone maybe a little bit further with color separation and part separation because it does feel a little bit simple in places, but I think for the result, it's definitely worth it. You get Yeah, it is basically one of those deals where you get what you pay for. So I would recommend this kit if you like model kits. If you just want to get a set of these toys, you're probably just going to have to pay the eBay prices because this does not feel like a toy. But that's about it. Let me know what you think in the comments. Remember to check my eBay link, and I'll see you in the next one.